What if I told you that economics, politics, and law are not three separate subjects, but three parts of the same machine? And once you see how that machine works, a lot of things start making sense. Why prices rise, why governments intervene, why some rules protect people, while others quietly reshape entire markets. This video is about looking at the world as a system, not just memorizing definitions, but understanding the moving parts behind them. Think of society like a city's traffic system. Economics is the flow of cars, money, goods, labor, and incentives moving through the roads. Politics is the traffic controller, deciding priorities, setting rules, choosing who gets access. And law is the road system itself, the lanes, signs, boundaries, and enforcement that make the whole thing work. If one of those changes, everything else reacts. Start with economics. At its core, economics is about scarcity and choice. Resources are limited, but wants are not. So every decision involves a trade-off. That's why prices matter. A price is not just a number, it is a signal. When the price of housing goes up, it tells builders, investors, and renters that demand is high and supply may be tight. That signal pushes behavior. More apartments get built, people share space differently, or some are priced out. A useful example, grocery prices. If the price of eggs rises sharply, it does not just mean eggs are expensive. It can mean supply shocks, higher feed costs, disease in livestock, or transport issues. The market is basically sending a message. Something in the system changed. Now politics. Politics decides how society responds when the market signal is not enough, or when the outcome seems unfair. For example, if rent gets too high, should the government do nothing and let prices adjust? Should it subsidize housing? Should it regulate landlords? Should it build public housing? Politics is where those choices get argued over. It is not just about ideology, it is about distribution. Who pays? Who benefits? Who has power? And this is where real-world systems matter. A policy might look good on paper, but if it ignores incentives, it can backfire. For example, a law that caps prices too aggressively might help renters in the short term. But if it makes building new housing less profitable, supply can shrink over time. So politics is not just about making decisions, it is about deciding under constraints. Now law. Law makes the system predictable. Without law, contracts are hard to trust, property rights are shaky, and businesses hesitate to invest. That is the mechanism. Law lowers uncertainty. If you know agreements will be enforced, you can hire workers, borrow money, buy equipment, and plan ahead. A concrete example is online shopping. Why do people trust buying from a stranger on the internet? Because there are legal rules around fraud, refunds, payments, and consumer protection. The law sits in the background, making everyday transactions possible. And law also defines boundaries. Antitrust law prevents companies from becoming so dominant that they crush competition. Labor law sets minimum standards for wages and safety. Environmental law limits pollution, because markets, left alone, may not account for the damage to everyone else. Here is the interesting part. Economics, politics, and law constantly shape each other. Economics tells us what people do when incentives change. Politics decides which outcomes society wants to change. Law turns those decisions into enforceable rules. So if you want to understand a real-world issue, ask three questions. What are the incentives? Who has the power to change the rules? And what does the legal system actually enforce? That framework works on almost anything. Minimum wage debates, taxes, immigration, housing, tech regulation, climate policy, even copyright. So the next time you hear a big policy debate, do not just ask, who is right? Ask, what system are they trying to change? Because in the real world, the outcome usually depends less on slogans and more on how the machine is built. If you understand the system, you do not just understand the news. You understand why the news keeps happening. Economics, politics, and law explained through real-world systems is just one small part of how the economy works. Markets, prices, jobs. If you are interested, our full free How the Economy Works, Markets, Prices, Jobs course is linked in the description.